Welcome to episode 83 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing Alan Trezza. He wrote a film called Bearing the X, which was directed by Joe Dante. Alan did a great job putting this project together. Basically, he had the script, he sent it out, he got a good reaction, people seemed to really like it, but he wasn't getting any traction actually getting the movie produced. So he basically just went out there and started producing the movie myself, and eventually he got this movie off the ground. So it's an excellent lesson on screenwriting determination. So stay tuned for that. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. A couple of quick notes. Any websites or links that I mentioned in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcasts, and then just look for episode number 83. A couple of quick updates about the blog. I added a bunch of screenplays last week to the SYS script library, including Rosemary's Baby, Birdman, The Theory of Everything, Jurassic Park, and the Breaking Bad pilot script. These were sent in by screenwriter Brooklyn Hudson, so thank you very much, Brooklyn, for sending these scripts along. If you have a bunch of screenplays that you don't see listed in the SYS script library, please do email them to me and I will add them to the library. The SYS script library is completely free. All the scripts are in PDF format, so you can download them and read them on whatever device you normally read things on. They work on iPhones. I read a lot of scripts on my iPad. You can read it in Kindle. They're just standard PDF, so they should work pretty well on just about any electronic device these days. To download any of these scripts, I think we have over 1,000 scripts now in the SYS script library. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/library. Again, that's sellingyourscreenplay.com/library. And it's a library of screenplays. And again, it's all free. They're all in PDF format, just waiting to be downloaded. Also, I published a new blog post this past week called Screenwriting Contests. I get a lot of questions about what screenplay contest to enter. You know, when are the deadlines? Are they worth entering? So I just made a list of some of the top contests. Some of the contests that, you know, I've heard are pretty good. They're well run. Many of the contests are people that I've interviewed on the podcast, so I recommend them. I think there's 9 or 10 contests that are on this list. If you're looking to enter some contests, definitely check that out. Again, I think these are all pretty reputable contests. They're contests that I would feel comfortable entering if I was entering my scripts into contests. The URL for this post is a bit unwieldy, so you can just probably find it if you go to the sellingyourscreenplay.com and then use the search box, type in screenplay contests, or I will link to it in the show notes. So again, just find the show notes, sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, find episode 83, and then I will put a direct link in the show notes to this blog post. So if you're looking to learn more about screenwriting contests and you're looking to figure out which ones are reputable, this is a list of 9 or 10 reputable screenplay contests that are worth entering. Also, a quick plug for LA Screenwriter. You may have noticed that this podcast is now also appearing on LA Screenwriter. LA Screenwriter has a lot of great content for screenwriters. So if you're looking to read some more screenwriting blog posts or just interesting articles on screenwriting, definitely check out LA Screenwriter. They have also put together a weekly email, so you can sign up for their email list, and then they will send you an email with the content from the previous week. So if you want to just be reminded of what posts they're publishing, it's a good, quick way to just get something in your email, flip through it, see if there's any articles that are interesting to you. Just sign up for their email list. It's all free. Their site is free. Obviously, this podcast is free, and it's appearing over there. Their URL is www.la-screenwriter.com. So do check that out if you're looking for some great screenwriting content. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address, and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks, along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide, how to write a professional logline inquiry letter, how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. It really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. I just want to mention two things I'm doing at Selling Your Screenplay to help screenwriters get their scripts into the hands of producers and sell their screenplays. First, we've created a monthly newsletter that will be sent directly to producers. Every member of SYS Select can submit one logline per newsletter, which is one logline per month since it goes out monthly. I went and emailed my large database of producers and asked them if they would like to receive this monthly newsletter of pitches. So far, I have well over 120 producers who have signed up to receive it. These producers are hungry for material and happy to read scripts from new writers. Again, this is very much, it's not a cold query letter. It's not a query letter to someone who doesn't know they're on the list. These people have specifically said, yes, I want to read material from the Selling Your Screenplay writers. So it's a great way just to get in there, network, and potentially meet some producers who are open to material from newer writers. If you want to participate in the pitch newsletter and get your script into the hands of some of these producers, sign up at sellingyourscreenplay.com/select. And secondly, we're now fielding leads from producers for screenwriters. We're doing a lot of outreach to try and bring in requests from producers for screenwriters. Last week, we had more than 10 paid screenwriting leads. These are producers and production companies who are actively looking to buy material or are looking to hire a screenwriter for a specific project. If you sign up for SYS Select, you'll get these emailed directly to you several times per week. Here are a couple of real examples from last week's leads. We had a novelist looking to hire a screenwriter to adapt their novel into a screenplay. This is a nice paid writing assignment. I see quite a few of these types of leads at various sources. We get some of these types of leads. I see them over in Inktip. This is fairly common, whether it be a novelist wanting to convert his novel into a screenplay or a producer who has optioned a novel and needs a screenwriter to write that novel into a screenplay format. These are quite common. And I think this is kind of, if you're looking to be a professional screenwriter, this is the type of thing, the type of job you're going to probably get some of as you work your way up the food chain. So that's a nice lead. Another lead that we had come in, we had a production company looking for 2 screenwriters to adapt 2 different treatments into full screenplays. So apparently this production company, they've written up, they have stories, they've written them into treatments. I'm not sure how detailed the treatments are, but they've written them into treatments, which is basically like usually it's like a 5 to 10 page sort of an outline version of the screenplay. One is an action adventure story, the other is a drama, and now they need to hire 2 different screenwriters potentially to take these treatments and turn them into screenplays. Again, this is a paid writing assignment. We had another producer seeking 420 pot comedy scripts. This is a popular niche right now. Again, I've seen quite a few of these types of leads out there. Basically, they want a screenplay, a comedy. Pineapple Express is kind of the probably the top of the key for this type of a thing. Basically, it's a screenplay that revolves around marijuana and the whole marijuana subculture. And, Cheech and Chong, Pineapple Express, there's a history of these kinds of films in Hollywood. They're generally very broad comedies. I think one of the things that stirred interest is the legalization of marijuana. Obviously, as marijuana becomes more and more legal, it'll become more and more accepted, and I think that there will be potentially a bigger market for these types of scripts. So again, if you have this type of a script ready to go, this would be a great lead to submit to. Anyway, this is just a small smattering of the leads from last week. A lot of these leads are still very much active, so if you join SYS Select now, you can still submit to them. And of course, we'll be bringing new leads in the coming week as well. To sign up, go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/select. A quick few words about what I'm working on. I actually had 2 options this past week. The first one was an Indian company, and this is a company I've been dealing with for probably a couple of years. I was always hesitant to option the script to them for a variety of reasons, and I'll kind of outline what I ended up doing with them. But basically, what they wanted to do was they wanted to option just the Hindi rights, meaning they just wanted to option the right to make this movie in the Hindi language, which is, of course, in India. And there would be no distribution or anything else outside of that circle. So they basically said they said they wanted to option these rights, and then ultimately, if they can get funding for their film, they will purchase these Hindi rights, no other rights. So they would allow me as the screenwriter to keep the rights, the English language rights, and any other rights that I ever wanted to sell, just not the India and Hindu rights. They would make that movie in Hindi, and they seemed to think think that there's essentially these movies don't get distributed outside of India. So the producer did not think that this would be a problem for me to then go about selling these other rights. I was a little bit hesitant and skeptical, and frankly, I still am. I think there's going to be a lot of producers that are hesitant to. I've had a couple of these companies where I had a guy last year who wanted to option the Turkish rights, make the movie in Turkey and option the Turkish rights. That kind of didn't work through. But this guy with these Hindi rights, as I said, we've been emailing back and forth just over the years. And finally, this is a script I've had for a few years. I haven't sold it. I've optioned it a couple of times, but I haven't sold it. So I finally said, listen, if you were to pay me enough, I might not even care if I could never sell any of the other rights. So we basically cut a deal. It's basically a free option. I think it's for 18 months. It's a free option for 18 months, but there's some real, important stipulations in this option. He will then, if he anytime in this 18 months, he can exercise the option and basically pay me for the script. And if he buys the rights, he's only buying the Hindi rights. So again, I maintain the rights to sell the script elsewhere. But there's a couple stipulations in there that are very important. It is a free option for 18 months. However, I have the right to cancel the option at any time if I get another producer interested in the script who doesn't want me to sell the Hindi rights. So this basically, I look at it as kind of a free roll. It's not a great option in terms of, moving my career up, but if he ends up exercising the option, he will pay me, and frankly, he's going to pay me more than a lot of the companies I've dealt with this script. It's a pretty low-budget script, so I'm not going to make a lot of money. He's actually going to pay me a decent sum if he exercises the option, and that's a big if, I know. But I basically get a free roll, because if I meet another producer and who wants to, produce it for the English language, for basically the rest of the world, the U.S. and Europe and anywhere else, Asia, and he doesn't like the fact that I've optioned these Hindu rights, I can, in writing, send this guy an email and say, listen, I know your option is going to be voided. I'm not going to, we're going to cancel that option agreement. So it felt like very much a free roll. If he gets it set up and pays me for the script, great. At the very least, I get to keep the English language rights. And I figure if nothing else, I could go and produce it myself, even if I couldn't find a producer. I am skeptical. Once I sell these Hindi rights, I am skeptical that I will be able to sell it to another producer. I asked a few producers I know, I asked them about it, and, they didn't have a firm answer, but they were a little like, gee, I don't know. I've never dealt with that. Gee, I don't know about that. So they were not that, overly optimistic that they, as a producer, would take these rights. They would buy the script once I had already, and keep in mind, if this guy buys it, he's going to go and make this movie. So there would already basically be a movie version in the universe. It wouldn't be in English, it would be in Hindi, but there would be this other version of the film. So generally when producers option a script, they're optioning it, in perpetuity, or they're purchasing a script. When they option it, no, but when they purchase the script, they exercise the option and they make the movie, they're buying all rights in the known universe in perpetuity. So this would be a little bit of a carve out. So, but I figure it's really a can't lose. If this guy buys a script and makes the movie, no one in this country is ever going to see it, obviously. So that's potentially bad for me. I won't necessarily get a good credit, but I will retain those rights. And even if I can't sell them to another producer, if I ever got the gumption, I could go and produce this movie. It's a script I always liked. It's a horror comedy script. I always liked it, so I always thought it needs a little bit of a bigger budget than what I think I could potentially raise myself right now. So that's the main reason I haven't done it. But I do think it's a good script, and so that's one option. Said to this Indian production company. I'm not sure I have all the answers on this. It's just really I'm just kind of trying it out. We'll see what happens with this. The other option was actually through Inktip, and this is the first. I've had a couple of near misses on Inktip, but I have used Inktip pretty consistently now for probably 3 years, and this is the first real option. And this is a script I've mentioned. It's a sort of a sci-fi horror thriller script. I wrote it last summer. I put it up in my writers group. Another writer in my writers group. I sent it out. I didn't send it out to my list, to all the people I know. I didn't end up optioning it. So another writer in the writers group who had heard it in the group, he liked it, and he wants to direct something. So he was like, well, maybe I could take a pass at this script. And at this point, this was probably last January, February. At this point, I said, well, sure, because I wasn't doing anything with the script. So he took a pass, and I think he did some good stuff. He really made it much more contained. He changed the ending, which I think was a very good. He made a much stronger ending, and he really stripped out a lot of the complexity so it could be shot on a lower budget. And then he went and put it on Inktip. Obviously, he put it up as a co-writer, so it's me and him's name on Inktip. And he got a couple of downloads on Inktip, and we've actually had, this was our second meeting. We actually met another producer maybe a month ago, and that didn't end up working out. But this producer contacted, this was actually the first producer, but this was probably 2 months ago. He contacted us, and we've just been talking to him for a while. And finally now he says, okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and option this. So the contract is basically all figured out. My lawyers looked at it. We're sending that off. I'm going to sign it and send it off today. So that's pretty much all done. So that's two, as I said, those are the two options that I've got going. I feel pretty good about this one. I mean, I'm not sure that this guy is going to get it going or not, but it's a very short option. It is another free option, but it's only for 2 months, and then after 2 months, he has to pay us, I think, $1,000 for another 6 months. So typically, these independent producers, giving him 2 months, he'll be able to get it out to his contacts. He'll be able to figure out if he's getting some traction with it, and if he's getting some traction, he can kick us a few bucks and then extend the option out and try and get the movie produced. So again, it's a kind of a no-lose situation. I figure it's only a 2-month option, which is a very, very short amount of time, but it should be enough time for him to know if he's going to be able to get some traction. The one downside was this was actually the script that I was thinking of shooting myself with this actual writing partner. He wants to direct something. We were thinking of trying to make it even lower micro budget and then go and shoot ourselves. So obviously this puts us sort of back on that. If this guy has now got it for 2 months and then, potentially another 6 months if he starts to see some traction. So that's kind of on hold. But again, I feel like it's a pretty decent option. This guy's got some credits. He's done some decent movies in the past. So I feel pretty good about that. The last thing I just wanted to mention quickly was the Blacklist. I mentioned this on the last week's podcast. I put up my mob action thriller script on the Blacklist. I got a rating of a 4, which is obviously a bad rating. I also got a rating of an 8, which is a pretty good rating. So that made my average a 6, and that average of a 6 was enough to get me into their top list. So last week when I recorded this, last Monday, I had gotten the 8 rating the previous Thursday. I hadn't gotten any downloads, but since then I actually have gotten a few downloads. So I recorded the podcast episode last week, and I said, gee, I got this average of a 6, but didn't get any downloads. The next day, I actually got 3 downloads. So that was the Tuesday after I recorded the podcast. So I got 3 downloads that day, and then I got 1 more download the following day. So that was 4 downloads total, and that's pretty much it. So now it's been 5 days. It's now Monday again. I'm recording this again. So it's been 5 days since last Wednesday. I got 1 download. So there's been 4 industry downloads since. Now it says it's coming up on a week and a half since I got on the top list. I've had 4 downloads. That's not terrible. If I were to get 4 downloads per week, I would think that's pretty good. But now that it's been 5 days, I haven't had any downloads. I don't know what that's going to be. Maybe Tuesday, Wednesdays are the big days that producers go in and download stuff. I'm just not honestly sure. But I don't think that's terrible. Like, as I said, 4 downloads per week I don't think would be terrible as well. You're on the top list. I think 4 downloads total is probably not that great. But again, we'll just have to see. None of the industry pros have gone back and given me a rating. So I kind of was hoping I was going to buy. I mean, in order to stay on the top list, you need to keep getting new ratings because you're only on the monthly top list for the month that you got your 2 ratings. So my average of a 6, whatever it is now, it's another, let's say 20 days or something, I will fall out of the top list unless I continue to get decent ratings. So I'm hoping that some of these industry people will come back and give me a rating. I can buy the ratings. I can get more reviews and buy the rating. I feel like your chances of getting a high rating from an industry professional, I frankly feel like is much greater than from a jaded script reader. The industry professionals, I can't believe that they're going to waste their time reading a script that they don't like. So if they read the first 5 or 10, 20 pages, they don't like it, they'll put it aside. I can't believe that they would then go and give the script a bad rating when they've only read, 10 or 15 pages. So my hunch is that the industry pros typically give much higher ratings than the paid analysts. So I'm hoping in the next, I'll keep it up for another few weeks, another month maybe, and we'll see if I continue to get some downloads. If I don't get any downloads, if 4 downloads is it, obviously I'll just take it down. But I'm hoping to get a couple more downloads and hopefully some ratings. And if you can get 4 ratings of above it's whatever the sort of the site averages, which I think is like 5.79 or something. So a 6 is definitely above that average. So if I can continue to stay above that sort of average score, then if you get 4 ratings, I think you can make like the annual list, and you can make the quarter. If you can get 3 ratings above the average, you make the quarterly list. So the more good ratings I can get, I can keep this script kind of floated to the top. And again, hopefully it will continue to get downloads. But it's actually, as I mentioned, the script, my sci-fi thriller script that was just optioned. I'm actually thinking this is a mob action thriller, and I'm kind of thinking that this one might be the one that I try and produce myself. So I've actually started to put out some feelers on that, gone out to some actors that I know, gone out to a producer. I had a meeting last week with a producer. So I'm starting to actually talk about maybe producing this one myself on a micro budget. We'll see how that shakes out. But in the meantime, I'm just going to keep it on the blacklist, and I'll definitely report back just to kind of let people know how that is all going. So now let's get into the main segment. Today I'm interviewing Alan Trezza. Here is the interview.
Welcome, Alan, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks, Ashley. I'm very happy to be here.
So to start out, maybe you can just give us a quick overview of your career in the entertainment industry, kind of how you got your start and, how you finally ultimately got this film made.
Sure. I fell in love with movies at a very, very early age. I think it was actually age 11 when I saw Clockwork Orange for the first time, and I realized that movies just weren't sort of about big action and spectacle, but that they could be about a whole lot more, and quickly delved into sort of every Kubrick movie I could get my hands on, and then just went from there and studied it in college. And then after I graduated, I quickly moved out to L.A. I'm from New York originally. And my first job in the industry was as an assistant for Miramax, which was putting out my favorite films at the time. This is the mid to late 90s. And was always writing because I just had a penchant for it. I really loved the challenge of it, of exploring themes and issues that I was interested in. And within 2.5 years of bugging people to read my stuff, my boss really took to this one script that I had called Baseline, which was what I described as a gritty sports drama set in the world of women's tennis. Now, sounds like a really sort of odd pitch. However, during my high school years, I was a member of a tennis academy, and I saw just how intense and sort of drama-filled that world was, and there hadn't really been a movie about that, so it just sort of sprang from me, and I wrote the script very quickly, I think in about 6 weeks. So my boss, after reading maybe 4 or 5 other scripts of mine, really took to this, and she managed to kick it up the ranks and sold it to Miramax Films.
And you're still working. You're still working as an assistant at Miramax while you sell this film to Miramax.
I was, yes. It was a really interesting time because in between answering phone calls and typing up notes for my boss, we'd have to sort of stop and then go to a notes meeting on my own script. So it was a very interesting time. And her name is Robbie Brenner. She's the producer of the Dallas Buyers Club, which was incidentally one of the first scripts she gave me to read when I first got the job working for her. So that just goes to show you and your listeners that if you want to make a movie, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And that's something I learned from her is you have to constantly sort of pick yourself up. Don't take no for an answer. Don't let anything discourage you. If you truly believe in something, it will get made. And that the hurdles and the obstacles and the rejections, it's just part of getting a movie made. It's all part of it. It's not just sitting down and writing it. That's just the beginning. When you really start hearing the no's and the doors get slammed in your face, you should sort of realize, okay, this is part of it. I'm in the middle of this thing. Now I can't give up because every no I hear is just one more step closer to hearing a yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I wonder if we can dive into some of what you just said, just a little bit deeper. So you said you're an assistant at Miramax. Maybe just for our listeners, tell us exactly what that entails. I mean, were you reading scripts? Were you getting coffee? Were you sitting in on development meetings? Just give us sort of a flavor of what that job was like, so people can kind of understand how that helped, and maybe you can even comment. Did that job, help your writing or hurt your writing, or kind of how did that influence you?
Yeah, well, as an assistant gig in Hollywood is the lowest rung on the totem pole. It's also sort of one of the most thankless jobs a person can have. However, I don't know of anyone who's broken in without going through that trial of fire. So basically, your day starts usually about 8 a.m. with a call from your boss or an email from your boss, asking if you read the script that came in the night before. What are your thoughts? Can you write coverage on it so that when I get into the office, I can talk about it as if I read it? And then from there, it's answering every phone call. It's scheduling meetings. A lot of the times it's writing up notes. It's reading screenplays. It's very, very intense environment to work in, but also is probably one of the best ways to learn how producing really works.
Yeah, for sure. And over this, how many years did you do this job?
Miramax was for 4 years.
And how many scripts do you think you read in those 4 years?
I wish I could put a number on it, but easily in the, in the several hundreds, if not thousands.
Yeah. And even taking a step back from before that, how did you get this job as an assistant? Because even those jobs, as thankless as they are, those are hard to get. So maybe you could just tell us quickly kind of how you got that assistant job.
Sure. College and university, and during my senior year, I realized that people were not going to be lining up at my door with job offers. I had to sort of make it happen on my own. So I put together a list of producers and production companies whose films I really admired and liked. And one of those producers was a man named Cary Woods. Cary is responsible for the careers of M. Night Shyamalan, Jon Favreau. He was the producer of the movie Kids, which Harmony Korine wrote and Larry Clark directed. He also produced the movie Scream. And when I sort of looked at his body of work, I said, here's a guy who I would love to work with because his tastes are just so impeccable. And thankfully, he was New York-based. So I cold called his offices and managed to score a coffee meeting with his development executive, and she really liked me. She really liked that I knew made and what they were working on at the time, and offered me an internship. And I believe I was interning there maybe 3 to 4 days a week. And when I finally graduated college, wanted to move out to Los Angeles. Cary and his development person put together a list of people that I should meet with, and Robert Brenner, who had just been promoted at Miramax, was at the top of the list. So when I came out here, she was one of the first calls I made, and thankfully she was looking for somebody. I had gotten a very good recommendation from Cary Woods, and that was enough for her.
Yeah. And so when you're working as an intern, you're still in college. That was unpaid work. You're basically just working there just for the experience. Is that correct?
Yes, for the experience and for the credit.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Well, I'm curious, whatever happened to this script Baseline, this first spec sale that you had? Is that still around?
John, I wish I knew. I believe that Miramax still owns it. What happened was they had bought it. We put a fantastic producer on it, a man named Andrew Panay, who later went on to produce the movie Wedding Crashers. And I did a few drafts. They sent me to Florida to the Nick Bollettieri Tennis Academy, where Andre Agassi was taught, on a research trip, and that was fantastic. That was 4 days in Florida, sort of following around the instructors and the students, and getting a real flavor for just how intense this lifestyle is. And then I think what happened was a movie came out called Wimbledon, and I think it was with Paul Bettany and Kirsten Dunst, and it didn't exactly light fire at the box office, so I think that kind of took the wind out of the sails of the project. So it just sort of lingered.
Yeah. I played tennis in college, and so I love tennis. I still today play tennis every now and then and watch tennis, but I've always seen, and there have been a few tennis movies over the years, and they pretty much always tank. So I just don't know that there's a market for tennis movies. So you mentioned that Baseline was, you said your boss had read 4 or 5 or 6 of your other scripts that you had written, and she really took to this one. So how many scripts, by the time you sold Baseline, exactly how many scripts had you written? I assume there were probably a few ones that you didn't show your boss because you didn't think they were ready.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, I used to know the number of them, but I think Baseline was number 5. I'm not exactly sure. I have to go back and look at my library because I have them lined up in date order. I think it was 5.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, so let's go ahead and dig into this. Your most recent script that just got produced is called Bury the X. Maybe to start out, you can give us. I'm sorry.
Burying the X, ING. Burying the X.
Burying the X. Yeah, I apologize. Burying the X. Let's maybe to start out, you can give us a quick pitch or a log line for the film. I will link to the trailer in the show notes so people can definitely get it that way. But maybe you can just give us a quick pitch so we kind of understand what it's all about.
It's set in Los Angeles, and it's about a guy named Max, who's a horror aficionado. He's in a relationship with a girl named Evelyn, who's beautiful, concerned about the environment, intelligent, but they just might not be the perfect pair. And when they decide to move in together, it really becomes evident that they're not meant to be together. On the day that Max is about to break up with Evelyn, he's involved in a terrible accident and dies. So Max mourns her passing for a few months and ends up meeting the girl of his dreams one night, who shares all of his interests, and he thinks he might have just met his soulmate. But as fate would have it, that same night, Evelyn comes back from the dead and thinks that she and Max are still together. So now our hero finds himself in the middle of this love triangle with the girl of his dreams and his ex from the grave. Complications ensue and good polarity, and it makes for a really fun, great time at the movies.
Yeah. Okay, so where did this idea come from? How did you kind of formulate this idea?
Well, for as long as I loved movies, I loved the horror genre, I think most of all, simply because of the whole experience of feeling scared, exhilarated, elated, everything, all those emotions that horror films stir up, I just loved, and it's one of the reasons why I fell in love with horror. So I would, every once in a while, do a little horror marathon on the weekends, just going through every sort of subgenre, slasher, zombie, vampire. And then one weekend I was checking out all the old zombie movies I used to love, and I realized that the best ones were the ones that used the zombies as a theme for something greater. George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, it's really about race relations. It's really about the people trying to survive each other, not really the zombies outside. Dawn of the Dead, which takes place in a shopping mall, is really about consumerism and just how these lifeless beings are flocking to this mall. And then most recently, 28 Days Later, which Danny Boyle directed, is about fear of disease and spreading a disease through blood. And then I started to think, well, you know what would really be a great metaphor for the zombie genre is a relationship that just won't die. And what better sort of metaphor than a woman or a man who starts to slowly decay as the love starts to go away, and it just sort of took off from there.
Yeah, yeah. So I always like to just ask the writers, kind of, when you were thinking about this story, what came first, though? Maybe you've kind of answered this, but what came first, though? Did you have this idea for a love story, or did you have this idea for the zombies?
The first image I believe that popped up was an ex-girlfriend who is decaying, showing up at a character's door thinking that they're still together, not quite realizing that she's dead or deceased or falling apart, but only realizing that she's back and that their love has been given a second chance. I believe that image was the first one. And then there's a line of dialogue in the film where one character says, "There's a freaking Tim Burton movie in your living room." That was the second thing that came. So that image of the girl showing up as a zombie, yet happy because she's reunited with her love, and then that little one-liner, those were the two things that first popped into my mind.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious if, obviously you've seen a lot of these zombie movies, and one of the things that occurred to me was I couldn't think of a single zombie movie where she has like intelligence and some sort of understanding of her situation. Typically, zombies are, by definition, zombies, kind of mindless, zombies. So how did that play into it? Did you think about the conventions? Did you think about breaking them? Was it more about this metaphor of the decaying love, and that's just how kind of it worked out?
Yeah, she had to still be able to communicate and talk and move around. She was basically the same person she was while she was alive. However, dialed to 10 is how we would describe Evelyn, and how Joe would direct Ashley Greene, who stars as Evelyn. She's the same person, yet everything, sort of her love is dialed up to 10, her energy is dialed up to 10, and then also her jealousy is also dialed up to 10, and all of that sort of informed who the character was.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk about sort of how this film ultimately got made. On IMDb, it lists a short that you wrote and directed. Was that a first step to getting this feature film produced?
Yes, in a lot of ways it was. When I came upon the idea, I thought something like this with a theme this clear could work as both a short film, and it could also work as a long-form film. So I had always wanted to direct a short film. I had directed several other shorts, but most of them were kind of spoofs and nothing really serious with like an actual script and cast. So I really wanted to make that leap, and when I came up with this idea, I wrote it out as a short film, which it was 15 minutes. And my friends and I got together. I got a very good casting director named Brad Gilmore, who's also the casting director on the feature version. And we got a very impressive cast, and we shot the short in 3 days, over a 3-day weekend. And I just had the time of my life. I just thought it was one of the best experiences I've had. And after that was done, it played at several festivals. We played at Comic-Con in San Diego. We played in New York. We played in Portland. And the response was always great. So I knew I had something that audiences thought was unique and also relatable in some strange ways. So I sat down and started to adapt it, and quickly realized I had to basically throw away the short film and start over. And it took about 6 months of writing and revising, but at the end of 6 months I had a 90-page script that I felt very strongly worked on its own as its own thing. There are slight similarities to the short film. I think there's a scene or two that might be almost identical, but it sort of works as its own. Both versions work as their own, on their own.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so take us through the process. Now you've done the short film, you've gotten into some festivals, you've now written the feature film script. What exactly did you do with it that ultimately led to it being sold and produced?
Well, this is going back 5 years, so as I said, you have to be in it for the long haul. So I'm going to try my best to remember everything that happened. After I had finished the feature-length script of it, I gave it to my manager, a man named Bob Sabani, who works at Magnet Management, and he's fantastic. He reps a lot of great writers, and always really believed in me since the early days when I sold Baseline. And he read it, I think, over the course of lunch. I remember emailing it to him, and then I think an hour and a half later, getting an email back saying, "This is fantastic. Such a fun read. I finished it in like 45 minutes. I love this. Let's try to go out with it," which basically means let's shoot it out to the town and see who bites, see who buys it. Unfortunately, like I said, this is going back 5 years ago, and people really loved the script and thought it was hysterical, but people didn't think that zombies were marketable. They didn't think that there was an audience for them. So that was kind of frustrating, but I did get the meetings and did the water tour, which basically means you go to studios and production companies and you sit and you wait and you drink a nice bottle of water while you wait, and then they bring you in and you meet with the producer or the executive and you talk for maybe 15 minutes and then they say, "Loved your script, we'll keep in touch, bye-bye." As I said, there were no sort of buyers for it, but people really dug it and kind of remembered me. I decided that if they're not going to make it, then I'm going to have to make it because I really believe in this thing. So I spent the next 5 years trying to put the thing together. And the first step was finding a director who matched this tone, this very specific tone, perfectly. And the first name that came to mind was Joe Dante, because of his films like Gremlins, The Howling, and The Burbs. No one does dark comedy better. No one blends horror and comedy better. And I managed to get it to his agent, David Gersh, who I had met in passing and also sort of was on phone calls with during my time as an assistant and later as an executive. And Joe responded to it very quickly, maybe within 4 or 5 days. And before I knew it, I was sitting down talking to Joe Dante about the project. And I was ready for him to give me pages and pages of notes. I was ready for him to tell me to change everything. I was ready for him to tell me, well, can the guy be a zombie and the girl be normal, or can we set it somewhere other than LA? But nothing like that happened. He was on board fully. He wanted to tweak a word here and change the scene there, but other than that, the script that he ended up shooting was pretty much the script that he had read, which never happens.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic.
So after getting him on board, I started to go to financiers and back to the production companies that had liked it but ultimately passed, and still zombies were not seen as marketable. Even after The Walking Dead came out, I would reapproach and they'd say, yeah, this is great, and Walking Dead we know is the #1 show on TV, but that's a television show and this is a movie, it's different. Then a movie called Warm Bodies came out, which was a romance with a boy zombie, and that did very, very well, and so did Zombieland. And I'd reapproach after every one of these movies would come out and hear the same thing, that, yeah, well, it's a trend and it's going to be over just as quickly as it began, and it's just not going to happen. And it wasn't until a movie called World War Z came out, where Brad Pitt was actually now in a zombie film, and it ended up being his highest grossing film of his career, that we were basically off and running within a matter of weeks. The money had come through. I was working with a company called Art Image and another company called Scooty Whoop, And our executive producer, Kathy Elways, was able to get it to Voltage Pictures, who managed to finance the film. And we were in production offices in a number of weeks. So a 5-year journey of just hearing no and no and no. And then over the course of a weekend, you're basically in pre-production. It's something that I couldn't explain, but I owe Brad Pitt special thanks in the credits because it was ultimately his decision to do a zombie movie that got our movie greenlit.
Yeah. Well, that's a fantastic story, and I really hope other screenwriters out there are listening to this. I mean, you essentially are the one who put this project on your shoulders and carried it to the finish line, and that's very important. I think a lot of writers have this idea that they're going to write the script, send it to their agent, and then just wait for the checks to start rolling in, and that's not always quite how it happens. I want to go back and touch on just a couple of things. So you met with Joe Dante. I definitely understand that he read the script. That's all good. And then you said basically he was on board. I'm just for clarification, exactly what does that mean when you say he's on board? Did he sign like a letter of intent? Did he come into these meetings? Did you start going around to these meetings with Joe Dante in tow? What exactly does that look like when he jumps on board?
Yeah, well, when somebody attaches themselves to a project, it's really always an intent. It's really always implied. I've never really seen a letter or an agreement saying that I am attached to so-and-so project. That might come later when financing is dependent on it, but in the sort of early stages, it basically means I'm attached to direct this project, and I will show up at any meeting or any lunch that you need me at, and I will talk about my vision for this. I will talk about how I know to make this movie and how I can make it on a low budget. So that's basically what that entails. So yes, Joe went to several meetings with me. We tried early on to attach a cast to make the package even more enticing to financiers. So Joe would attend casting sessions, and he really put a lot of legwork into this thing, and I appreciate it, and it all ended up working out for us.
Yeah. And another thing, and this kind of just sort of on the edges of this project and perhaps other projects. I mean, you sound like such a hustler. I'm wondering if there wasn't some other projects similar to this one that you were working on and maybe they didn't take off. This is the one we're talking about because it ultimately got made. But do you have other projects that you're basically doing the same thing with that maybe didn't quite materialize like this one?
Around the same time as the script of Burying the X was going out, I had another script called Sanctuary, which is an exorcism script. As I said before, I love horror movies and I love every genre under the horror movie banner. And another one of my favorites is the demonic possession film. And I had this idea of using demonic possession as a metaphor for the anxiety and the fear and the pain that we feel time to time that we just can't pinpoint, but we know it's somewhere inside. And I decided to take that and infuse it into this demonic possession film about a girl in her 20s who's experiencing horrible nightmares, panic attacks, depression, and sort of goes on this journey to find out who she is and why she's this way. And she ends up in New Orleans, where she is taken in by a secret sect of the Vatican who tell her, we know why you're feeling the way you feel. It's because there's a demon that's taken possession of you. And if you don't train with us, if you don't take control of this demon, the demon will take over you. And that's what we do here. We teach you to take control of the demon and use its strength to fight people who have given in to the demon. So it's a bit along the lines of The Matrix, with Blade thrown in there and also Wanted. And around the time that Burying was going out, that also was starting to catch fire. And then I ended up selling that to Paramount Pictures with Joel Silver, the producer of The Matrix, producing it. And it's currently in development now, and Paramount's very excited about it. So we'll see, maybe getting Burying made will help push Sanctuary to the green light.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's just quickly wrap up here, and maybe you can just tell people where Burying the X is going to be playing, kind of how they can see it, if you know the dates it's going to be released.
Yeah, Burying the X comes out June 19th, Friday, June 19th. It's playing at AMC theaters across the country. For anyone who lives in LA, it's going to be playing at the Universal City Walk, which is a great theater. It's also playing in New York at the AMC Empire on 42nd Street, and AMC theaters across the country. It's also going to be available on iTunes and video on demand. But Joe, Dante, and I ask everyone, if they can, to please watch it in the theaters because it's just such a fun experience. There's so many great gags that work so well on the big screen, and we've seen it several times with audiences, and it just really kills. The laughs are just, they come fast and they don't stop for 90 minutes. So we really hope everyone really enjoys it.
Yeah. Perfect. So the final question, I'd just like to wrap up. How can people contact you or follow along with what you're doing? If you have a Twitter handle, maybe you can mention that, or a Facebook page or a blog, really whatever you feel comfortable. Maybe people can just kind of follow along with what you're doing in the future. That's part of me. I like to sort of keep private.
Sure. I like my work to speak for itself. As I said, Burying and Sanctuary and all the projects that I work on are extremely personal. So if anybody wants to know anything about me, they can just watch the movies. Mm-hmm. I think they each act as a sort of a biography of who I am and what I'm going through at a given time. So I don't have a Twitter handle. I don't have Facebook. I'm rarely on email. I'm sort of always working on the next thing and trying to infuse what I'm going through and what I'm experiencing into that next thing. It saves on therapy bills.
Yeah. No, fair enough. So, Alan, you've been very generous with your time. I really appreciate your coming on and talking with me today. I really enjoyed the movie, so well done on that front, and I really wish you luck with it.
Thanks so much, and best of luck to all the listeners, and please try not to get discouraged. Just remember that it's all part of it. The rejection, it's going to come. I don't care who you are. It's all part of the process, and brats are all part of the process, and frustration and starting from scratch. It's all part of writing.
Yeah.
And if you're not experiencing all of that, then you're not writing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, truer words have never been spoken. So thank you very much, Alan.
Okay, no problem, Ashley, and thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye-bye.
A quick plug for the SYS Screenwriting Analysis Service. It's a really economical way to get a high-quality professional evaluation of your screenplay. When you buy our 3-pack, you get evaluations at just $67 per script for feature films and just $55 for teleplays. All the readers have professional experience reading for studios, production companies, contests, and agencies. You can read a short bio on each reader on our website, and you can pick the one who you think is the best fit for your script. Turnaround time is usually just a few days, but rarely more than a week. The readers will evaluate your script on 6 key factors: concept, character, structure, marketability, tone, and overall craft, which includes formatting, spelling, grammar, typos. Every script will get a grade of pass, consider, or recommend, which should help you roughly understand where your script might rank if you were to submit it to a production company or agency. We provide analysis on feature and television scripts, and we also do proofreading. So if you don't want an analysis but would like someone to proofread your script, we now offer that as well. And also, we've rolled out a couple of new services. In addition to the proofreading, we also will analyze a treatment. So if you have a 5, 10, or even 20-page treatment, we can send that to one of our readers, and you'll get the same basic analysis back where they evaluate your story on those 6 key points. We also have a service now where we will write a logline and synopsis for you, and you can add that to any of the packages that we offer. So you can buy a screenplay analysis, and then you can also tack on you can buy a screenplay analysis, and you can also tack on, for an extra $50, you can tack on a logline and synopsis, where our readers will actually write your logline synopsis for you. I mentioned this last week on the podcast. I get a lot of people asking us to do this, so I figured, well, why not? I might as well you put it up as a product. I really don't necessarily recommend this. I really think, writing your own logline, first off, you should be writing your logline before you even start your screenplay. So you should have a decent logline. If you can't write a decent logline, I don't think you should be even writing that script. So I recommend you actually write your logline before you start your script. But you also should be able to write a good synopsis. I mean, no one's going to be able to write the synopsis quite as well as you. You're going to know the script much better than anybody else. Again, it's a service that people kept asking us about, and my readers are happy to do it. So I thought, well, I'll roll this out as a product, but give this some careful consideration, whether it's really something you want to pay for or not. It might be worth paying for it just so you have a version of your synopsis and logline that you can refer to. Maybe then you go in and rewrite it. It gives you a starting point, kind of just a nice jumping off point to help you sort of really flush out your story. But if you can do it, I think it's definitely well worth you to actually write your own logline and synopsis. As a bonus, if your script gets a recommend from a reader, you get a free email and fax blast to my list of industry contacts. This is the exact same blast service I use myself to promote my own scripts, and it's the same service I sell on the website. It's a great way to get your script into the hands of producers who are looking for material. So if you want a professional evaluation of your screenplay at a very reasonable price, check out www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. In the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing Tony Alupis, who wrote an indie drama thriller called Safe Light. He talks very openly about how he got this movie made, and he talks quite a bit about how he got his career started. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. To wrap things up, I just want to touch on a few things from today's interview with Alan. I think so many newer writers think that if they can get their screenplay to the right people and they like it, it means that it'll get produced and your career will take off. But really listen to what Alan said today in their interview. He's been working in the industry for years. He had contacts. He knew the right people. He got his script to the right people, and really listen to what he was saying. A lot of these people, these so-called right people, they read his script and they did like it, but the script still didn't take off until he got behind it and really started producing it. And this is such an important point. So many newer screenwriters, they really overvalue sort of the idea and the script, and they think, gee, if I could just get it to the right person. And it's not always that simple. Even really good scripts oftentimes don't end up getting produced. Even the greatest scripts, I mean, sometimes they just, for whatever reason, they don't quite hit the mark. They don't quite someone at the production company doesn't quite get behind them. It's a very complicated equation why something gets made. And it's not always just the quality of the writing that determines that. And this is not a bad thing. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into making a movie. It's extremely expensive. Certain production companies have certain histories with distributors that can distribute certain types of films. There's certain, templates and models that these companies use. They've done films in the past, and some of them have failed, some of them have succeeded. So they're constantly trying to reproduce the successes. And maybe this script, maybe they look and say, wow, this is really great writing. I really love this script, but it doesn't quite fit the template of what has worked for us in the past. And so we can't go and get behind it. So it's a very complex equation. And I think so often new writers are just like, man, if I could just get my script to the right person. And that's why I think I get this question so often. How do I get an agent? How do I get an agent? That's like one of the most common questions. And I think so often it misses the point, because getting an agent does not mean things are going to be smooth sailing. Getting your script into the hands of, the so-called right people or the producers. And even if they like the script, that doesn't mean it's just going to take off and just everything is going to be, all downhill from there. It still can take a while, and it can still be a lot of hard work. Alan had the right contacts. He had a script that people read and liked, and it just was sputtering, and it didn't stop sputtering until he basically got in there and started producing it. So that's really part of the job as a screenwriter, a successful screenwriter. Sometimes you got to step in there and you got to be a producer too. You got to start to put the project together. You got to start raising money. You got to go out and try and find a director. You got to start actually being a producer on the project. no one is going to be as passionate about your project as you are. And so sometimes you've just got to step up and take the plunge and start producing your own stuff, just sitting in your apartment, just writing script after script after script, waiting for your agent to call, waiting for a producer to call you who wants to run out and raise the money for things. That can be a very, very long wait sometimes. So really listen to this podcast and think about what Alan did and think about how maybe you can apply it to your own situation. Maybe you don't have the resources Alan had. That's fine. I totally get that. But maybe there's resources you do have. Maybe you got to just get your iPhone, write something you can shoot on your iPhone. Just get something done, get a credit, get on the board, get something into film festivals, start to network and expand your options. I really genuinely believe, and I've talked about this a lot on the podcast, going out and doing shorts is just such a great way to kind of get your feet wet, get some on-set experience, get some sort of practical experience. I get a lot of questions like when I say, gee, write something that's micro budget, write something that's low. I get questions from people saying, well, gee, how do I know how much something's going to cost? The way you're going to know how much something costs is by doing some shorts. I mean, a lot of it's common sense, but a lot of it is just going out there and doing shorts and seeing how scenes are shot and producing a short. Produce a 5 or 10 minute short in your spare time. Write something, go out and produce it. Put an ad on Craigslist for a cinematographer. Put an ad on Craigslist for some actors. Just get out there and do something. And that's how you're going to learn, by producing something, even a short. You're going to learn, gee, this scene that I thought was so simple and easy, it was really tough. It was tough to find this very specific location. And it was tough to get actors to pull off these types of jokes. And you'll really start to understand sort of how the mechanics of this works. And that can only benefit your writing. I mean, aside from just getting some credits and getting into film festivals and networking, just seeing the practical side of production can really help you as a writer. Anyways, taking a step back to what Alan did, I'd really applaud him for just going out there and, again, just producing this movie. Everybody was saying, gee, I really like the script, but I can't help you. And so he didn't just sit back and just wait for somebody to finally step up. He just went and stepped up himself. So really consider that as you are spending your time writing, is maybe you could also be spending some of your time producing. Anyway, that's the show. Thank you for listening.